Competing in Jiu Jitsu for some people is all about collecting medals and glory. But for others, it's about the test, seeing where you really rank against people who you don't train with, who don't know your strengths and weaknesses. Competing is definitely worthwhile doing at each belt, purely to gauge your skill and to truly see the holes in your game. But it isn't crucial, it's not the most important thing. And competing over 35, especially in the lower belts, can be daunting. So these are some of the things I've learned. My name is Stefan Bradley. I'm a purple belt from down the bottom of the globe in a beautiful little country called New Zealand. Competition has never been the focus for me, but I have competed a few times in various rule sets with varying results. I started training Jiu Jitsu in my early 30s, and about a year in, I had my first competition in Australia, which is where we were living at the time. I entered gi and no gi in the Masters division at lightweight. I had to cut a few kilos to get there, but I went in there feeling lean and sharp. But there was nobody in my no-gi bracket, so I got bumped up to middleweight. The day started off with gi, and I had two pretty tight, low-skilled wrestling matches. The intensity was way higher than I thought it was going to be. I understood the scoring of the points, but that all still just went straight out the window. I had a chance for an Americana in the second match, but I let it go because he wasn't tapping, and honestly, I was getting worried. So first division was all done and dusted. I won both of my fights and got the gold. I was feeling pretty good. I didn't really have any nerves before going out there. I was just excited to go out and have some fun. So then I had about 3 hours to wait until the no-gi matches. My first match was against a really good friend of mine, Sam, who trains at another gym. A week before the competition, we both done a private together with one of the purple belts at his gym, and we done like a little trial match against each other. And I won that one, so I was feeling pretty confident going into it. But he was bigger and stronger and spent the whole fight in half guard with me stuck on the bottom with no real idea of what to do, and him on the top, blindly looking for subs. He ended up taking the win from 2 points, which I think came from a takedown, either right at the start or during a scramble in the middle. I can't really remember, but a 2-point win. So that match really taught me a lot about half guard and how important it is, and half guard has become a huge part of my game now. So then I went straight into what was a final eliminator match. So because there was only 3 of us in the division, me and Sam went first. The winner went straight through for the final, and the loser had to fight the guy that was waiting. So by that point, I was pretty exhausted. I put up a good fight for about a minute and a half, but eventually gave up my back and got submitted. So this guy went through to the final and got absolutely smoked by Sam. So I got onto the podium for the second time of the day, but to be honest with you, I didn't keep that medal. Not so much out of pettiness, but when we left Australia, we didn't have a whole lot of room in our luggage, and I was like, do I really want to cart a bronze medal around the world that I got for losing twice? So I left that one behind. And then because of the COVID pandemic and moving around countries and whatnot, I didn't compete for a while. Not until this year when I entered the Oceania Open. My build up for that was horrendous. We had colds and flus and stomach bugs, and I ended up with quite a nasty sinus infection about a week before the competition. But the morning of the competition, I woke up feeling the best I had in weeks. There was still no real nerves before going out onto the mat. But my first fight, he came at me hard, and when he put his hands up for the grips, it felt like I'd been punched to the point where I was dazed, and I was kind of running off instincts for the first minute of the match until my head cleared. I remember having him in my guard, and he was up really high and over me and looking for the choke, but that's when I knew I had him. He was strong and aggressive, but he was way too eager for the sub, to the point where he was disregarding the fundamentals. There were a few scrambles, but I ended up in mount and managed to bait him into the armbar. But I was exhausted. I've never felt fatigue like that from Jiu Jitsu before. The adrenaline plus the sinus infection came back hard. I had 10 minutes until my next match, but just couldn't recover. When the second match started, I felt like I'd gone straight from one match into the other. And that second match was definitely harder than it needed to be. He was breathing hard from the start, but I just had no strength left. I had a pretty solid armbar at one point, but I just couldn't extend my legs out to get the finish, so I ended up abandoning it. After about 4.5 minutes of scrambling, I finally got the guard pass, secured some points, and just held on for the last 20 seconds. I had another 10 minutes before the final, but again, I just could not recover. My forearms were completely gone by this point. I was shaking. I was trying to text my wife, but just couldn't hold my phone. The pressure in my head was insane, and I just could not slow down my heart rate or my breathing. And the final was against a guy who I'd been sat next to and chatting with the whole time. Someone who competes regularly and obviously had a really good game plan. He had really good coaches in his corner. He was controlling his breathing between rounds. He was always just switched on and focused, but still managed to have a little bit of lighthearted banter. Deep down, stepping out onto the mat, I knew I was going to lose that fight. And the match more or less went down just like that. He was good, he was constantly moving, constantly threatening, but I managed to keep myself safe the whole time. I just couldn't really progress. But then he got my back. That was more or less where the match finished. He had me in a bow and arrow choke, but it wasn't really there. I knew there was only 30 seconds left. I knew I had no energy left to fight it. So I just had my hand in and I just stayed more or less there. My coach was screaming, my coach looked panicky, but I knew I was safe, but I knew I lost. Afterwards, I was shaky, I was weak, and I spent the next week recovering from that sinus infection. After the sickness, I recovered fine, but my pride had taken a hit. It sucked going out there and losing the last match on points. At the end of the day, second in all of Oceania, it felt pretty good, and I do hold my head high now. I just couldn't do the prep I needed to in the build-up, and I came up against a competition vet, someone who knew the game, someone who had a good game plan, somebody who knew his strengths and knew how to implement it. If you want to do well in competition, you have to compete regularly. Competition is just different. It's a different intensity. The points, the positions, the scoring, everything matters so much more in that than just in a roll. I competed again a few months back in a submission only open age competition, and that was the wake up call I think I really needed. So I entered gi and no gi. And in my first fight in gi, the guy I was up against had over 30 wins by submission on his record. He was 20 something, he was strong, he was fit, he knew exactly what he needed to do. He put me exactly where he wanted me and did exactly what he wanted to do, and he got the sub pretty early. My second fight was against a guy who was about 17 years old, didn't have much experience, and I eventually got the sub. So I finished up second, and then there wasn't much downtime and it was straight into no gi. But honestly, I didn't want to be there. I had a pep talk from my wife, I had a pep talk from one of my teammates. I just wasn't feeling it. I'd prepped well, except for no-gi. To be honest, I don't train a whole lot of no-gi. I more use it as a tool to help with my control for gi. And yeah, I just wasn't in the headspace. My first match was against a young guy who trains at my mate's gym. And again, already has a lot of competition experience. Trains mostly no-gi, a young, determined, fit, strong guy. And same sort of thing, he put me exactly where he wanted me. I managed to escape a few early sub attempts, ended up recovering half guard, but went straight into a ghillie, and he got the tap. But my next match is where the day ended for me. I rushed a lazy guard pull on a young, hungry, no-gi specialist. He grabbed my ankle, I grabbed his ankle, even though looking back, I probably should have looked for the escape. And my leg broke. You can watch the whole video here. I had no right to be in there in a competition with young guys who not only compete regularly, but compete regularly in a submission-only rule set that I'm not familiar with in no-gi. Honestly, what was I thinking? I will probably compete again at purple belt, but it'll be in a master's bracket in gi and in at least a year's time once my leg's fully recovered. If you want to compete over 30, stay in your lane. Age, weight, gi or no gi, we're most likely not going to be world champs or the GOAT. We're doing this for fun, not for glory. We're testing ourselves. Comps are great to learn your weaknesses, meet new grapplers, see new techniques. The focus you develop in the build-up, the physical changes and discipline you develop is all worthwhile, but understand the risks. I've got it wrong and had to have 2.5 months off work. Oceania definitely added a week onto my sinus infection. But here's a few things I recommend if you want to compete. Don't bother with a weight cut. It takes time away from what's most important, honing your jiu-jitsu skills. And a few kilos isn't gonna make a difference. Take plenty of water and easy to digest carbohydrates and protein for after you've competed. I take sandwiches on white bread or sugary treats for in between matches, because it digests easily and it gives your body the energy it needs straight away. And I take water and I take coconut water for electrolytes. Protein takes longer to digest and uses more energy, so I save that for after I've finished competing. A protein shake, a chicken salad, something light and easy I can just snack on straight away. And have a proper warm up. If you can, roll with a teammate before you go out. And have a game plan for these 4 scenarios. If you get the takedown, what is your strategy from there? If you get taken down, how are you going to escape? Where are you going to go to get back to the original strategy? If they pull guard, what are you going to do to pass their guard and get to where you want to be to score some points? And if you end up having a pull guard, what is your game plan from there? Just relax. I saw guys out there that looked like they were a deer in the headlights. They were terrified before hopping out onto the mats, and they got smashed. I also saw guys that looked like they were ready to kill, pacing up and down the mat, and they went out there and got smashed. Stay calm, focus on your breathing, trust your game plan, and just go out there and have fun. So that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. A little bit different from my usual content, focusing on mobility and recovery. So let me know in the comments what it is you're struggling with in your jiu-jitsu game. And while you're down there, give me a like and subscribe so more people like you can find the channel.